Welcome back. You might remember last week we were discussing the cost of living in Australia as it's become such a key election issue, and we suggested that, you know, incomes had actually kept pace with the cost of living. Many of you wrote to us saying, well, no, that's not the case. It doesn't feel like that. So we thought we'd investigate this a little further.
So if you're talking to most economists, despite what a lot of people are saying, they'll tell you that we've in fact never had it so good. Disposable incomes are rising at a faster rate than living costs, and the average household is $305 a week better off than in the mid-1980s. And since Labor took office, real incomes have increased by $102 each week. This is the smallest increase in the cost of living in 25 years.
So are we, as a nation, simply crying poor? Simon Cowan from the Centre for Independent Studies joins us now. Good morning to you, Simon.
How are you going, guys?
Terrific. Now, we're reading in the press this morning that the cost of living has risen by 2% a year over the lives of the Rudd and Gillard governments. But in the same time, disposable incomes have risen faster. Does that mean, can we just do a simple equation and say, does that mean that we are financially better off?
It's always worth digging into these statistics a little bit more. I mean, one of the things you see about averages, of course, is that it includes a lot of people. Yes. There are pockets of people in areas where the cost of living is very high and people are struggling. And so it's important when you look at statistics like that to say, OK, can we break this down a little bit more?
Yep.
I think if you look at areas like electricity prices and housing in particular, which is excluded from a lot of these indices, you see that the story's a little bit more nuanced.
Why do they exclude those things from these
Well,
indices?
The cost of living indices include mortgage repayments, but they don't include house prices.
Right.
And you'll see house prices across the country vary quite a lot. We've seen very high increases in Perth, as you might expect, from the mining boom. But between, say, 2001 and 2011, house prices in Hobart went from an index of 55, 56 to 160.
There is a suggestion that the reason that there is the perception out there that people are doing it particularly tough, and there's no doubt that there, of course, are people that are, but that we are expecting more. We want 2 cars, 4 mobile phones, 3 television sets, etc., etc. Is that what is behind this?
To an extent, that's true. One of the great things about Australia, though, is that we do expect more and we have this aspirational culture. And what that really feeds into is when you look at things like social mobility. Now, in the US, since the global financial crisis, we've seen their social mobility's really fallen back. And what we mean there is that people who are poor stay poor and their children stay poor. Now, in Australia, we've got a different story. You can be born in the lowest sort of 30% of income, but your children and your children's children might rise to be in the top 25% of income. So it's very important to keep track of statistics like that as well. So we should never just put down that aspirational culture, even if it does sometimes lead to us whinging when maybe we shouldn't.
Right, so then what do we attribute the sense that we are doing it tougher than ever after, 21 years of uninterrupted economic growth, almost record low unemployment, low interest rates, the fact that we have more disposable income than ever? So what do we attribute our sense of doing it tough to?
There's a few different factors here. One of it, we had a massive boom and we had a really very strong economic conditions up to the global financial crisis. After the global financial crisis, we've seen that mining and other industries have done very well and some haven't. But the feeling out there in the community is that their jobs aren't as safe as they once were. And that really feeds into that feeling like you're doing it tougher because you're not sure about what's going to happen with your employment.
So is that, that in itself, where does that come from, that feeling? Is it fed by our politicians constantly trying to put the fear into us so that they have a problem to solve, even if a problem doesn't exist?
Sometimes it is like that, but if you look at, say, manufacturing, where the workforce has fallen by 700,000 people over the last sort of 30 years, other industries like that, there is actually something to be concerned about. I mean, the media and politicians sort of play up that because bad news sells newspapers. But, there's other factors at play here as well. If you look at the price of things like electrical goods and other imports, we've had high Australian dollar And we've had this massive increase in global free trade over the last sort of 30 years. In Australia, tariffs have gone from 50% to 5%. What that's done is it's fed a one-off decrease in prices for a whole lot of things. So cars and electrical equipment basically cost the same now as they did in 1985. Other areas prices have gone up. Electricity prices have risen by 90% in the last 5 years. And you get your electricity bill every 3 months and you see this enormous increase in prices and you think, wow, I must be doing it really tough.
It's that constant reminder, isn't it, rather than those one-off costs.
Yes.
You know, of
the highly visible costs have gone up.
Yeah. All right,
the
Simon,
invisible ones haven't.
we have to
We've
leave
gone
it
down.
there. We're out of time, but yeah, fascinating stuff.